Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen.
Hello and welcome to Gegenpressing, the Bundesliga podcast. I'm Manu and Stefan. He's Stefan Bienkowski. This is the transfer show. Stefan, how's it going?
Yeah, not bad at all. Just kind of reeling from bonkers transfer stories, trying to keep my head on, because I think a few times I actually bet on Twitter over the weekend just about the sheer ferocity and quantity of transfer stories. We're definitely in silly season now, but you know, it's why we do this show, because there's so much to talk about every week, and we try and kind of break it down and talk about what's relevant, what's not relevant, and hopefully we can do that today.
Yeah, well, we hope so. Obviously, beginning of the week, right? Trying to get our bearings straight here. Just going through some of these rumors on Transfermarkt. Some of it is quite silly. Then, of course, you have several reports. We should this week start with Bayern Munich. Let's start with what is concrete. For a change, do something that actually does seem likely to happen, and that's Kim Min-jae. I hope that's how you pronounce his name. My Korean isn't the best. The center back from Napoli, set to join Bayern Munich. This seems like pretty much a done deal. Napoli have almost no control whatsoever over the situation here, because he has an exit clause that's active in July, right? Bayern Munich have already agreed personal terms with Kim, who was described as a monster. Both you and I wrote articles on him this week. I for Forbes, you for Transfermarkt. This is a very impressive player. Bayern Munich kind of wrestling their way into this one. Man United also were, of course, interested as well, but they acted so very quickly in this. And if they do get us across the line, of course, nothing is official until player holds up the jersey at the presentation. But I mean, this is such an impressive piece of business when you look at the numbers. 47 million euros for a defender who was one of the most outstanding defenders in Serie A last season. A league that in many ways is one of the best when it comes to defenders. Stefan, Bayern get this across the line. I also reckon there's going to be a few other pieces moving. We're going to get that in a second, I think. But Bayern get this across the line. That's a huge piece of business done.
Yeah, it is. Bayern seem to, when it comes to central defenders, it's one of the few positions they don't seem too worried about splashing the cash. I don't know if it's just because they feel like they get their money's worth, or maybe they just feel like they're very crucial members of the squad, which is no bad thing. When you kind of dig into the details of this kind of potential move, it does strike me as a situation in which, the player made the move to Italy just a season ago from Turkey, and I do kind of wonder, and this is just me purely speculating, that he maybe only agreed to join Napoli on the very strict assumption that he would be moving on at some point, and there wouldn't be too many roadblocks in the way of it, because you look at this £45 million or euro release clause, the fact that the agent is apparently getting €15 million in terms of, or maybe even 15 million of that 45 million. And, anyone who kind of follows European football in general will probably know that Napoli usually aren't in the habit of selling their star players, unless they absolutely have to. You only have to look like Osimhen or, I forgot about his name, actually, the Georgian winger. I can remember his name, I can never say it properly. Yeah, there we go. Kvaratskhelia. I mean, they would they do just about anything to sell those two players. We saw this with Koulibaly as well for a number of years. They only let him go basically when he was past his peak. So for them to sell Kim in this manner really makes me think that, it was kind of like a deal that had been made when he joined the club. And maybe they were quite surprised at how well he did. I wrote a piece for Transfermarkt where I spoke to our Italian football area manager who, knows everything to do with Serie A, and he's the one who said that in Italy they describe him as a monster physically in terms of how he plays. And, he didn't make too much, he didn't really mince his words. He said, he probably was the best central defender in the league last season, this past season there. So it seems like Bayern are really getting an impressive deal here. And it does kind of make me wonder where Kim fits into this team, because if you kind of look at his profile and the kind of player that he is, and, I kind of put together some numbers for Transfermarkt, and, I kind of said, he's in the top 10 for interceptions, blocked shots, and, as Yatin kind of said, physically, you called him a monster, and I think what he means by that is he's very tenacious off the ball. And the interesting thing about him is he's not actually, his aerial, he doesn't attempt a lot of aerial duels. He's not like a kind of towering defender, like an old-fashioned sense, but he's actually in like the top 10, I think, for percentage of aerial duels won. So he's a very smart defender. He reads the game very well. And I do kind of, when I was kind of piecing this piece together, and I was kind of started thinking how he fits in at Bayern, I do kind of wonder if this is meant to be a kind of long-term replacement, or maybe not even long-term, just an immediate replacement for Dayot Upamecano, because if you kind of look at the way that Bayern defence is set up right now, you've got Lucas Hernandez, who may or may not be leaving, which is one thing, but if you look at the fact that, assuming Tuchel wants to play a back four, right, which is maybe a bit of an assumption, but let's just go with it for now. As things currently stand, it's probably De Ligt and Upamecano back there. Obviously, De Ligt's not going to go anywhere after the club spent a lot of money on him. And considering the season Upamecano's just had, where he had a high number of high-profile mistakes, to the extent that, you don't really want to kind of continue kind of bringing these things up for, you don't want to be kind of beating these guys when they're down, but it got to the point in the season where I don't think it's unfair to say that Upamecano basically made himself unreliable to the extent for Tuchel. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone into the summer transfer window and said, I need someone reliable to take that spot instead of Upamecano next season. And, we've already seen the last kind of couple of weeks a lot of speculation about Upamecano being moved on. And yeah, I think that's a really interesting one to keep an eye on. Maybe, this is all coming up because of the Hernandez stuff, and he might be replacing him, but it seems to me as though Bayern are far more determined to keep a hold of Lucas Hernandez, whereas, I wouldn't be surprised if they quite happily sold Upamecano onto like a Premier League club who'd be able to, throw 20 or 30 million euros their way, because if you watch the way Kim plays and where he plays on the pitch, which is the right-hand side of a back two or a back three, that's kind of where Upamecano plays.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.